I had the most epic game of Monopoly once, probably the last time I ever played for this very reason. I was living in New York, I had a couple friends over. It was my first apartment, I think, in New York. Playing Monopoly with a couple of my friends, and I didn't want to play because it was like 2 a.m. and we're fucking hammered. And they're like, "No, I don't want to go home yet. Let's play." And I'm like, "You guys live 2 blocks away from here. Just go home." And they didn't go home. So I fucking schooled their asses, and I literally got every property and all the money in the game, and it was so epic. I took a fucking Polaroid, and then I retired.
Never to play the game.
Do I still have that Polaroid?
Bet you do.
Better mother believe I do. That's right.
That day, Dave was crowned tycoon.
Yeah. It's the only worthwhile thing I've ever done in my
Captain
life.
of industry.
Not your children, not your career, the Monopoly winning.
I mean, I'm sure there are people out there who'd be like, "Your career? What?" So, whatever. Hey everybody, welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. I write sometimes for Salt Lake City Weekly, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Yeah, you are.
Woohoo!
Evan, you bummed me out with not pronouncing it association. So
I'm sorry. Je suis très désolé.
You're forgiven. Okay, so we got movies on the show today, as we always do. I mean, what the fuck else would you be listening to this for? So let me tell you what those movies are, and then we'll get right into it. First, we've got MLK FBI, which is a documentary, which Evan talked about very briefly a couple of months ago, but we're going to get into it a little more depth. Then we have Don't Tell a Soul. I've just said it like that because I wanted to. Third on the docket tonight is Hunted, and which is Hunted. And then the last movie is the annual January Liam Neeson thriller, The Marksman. The annual Liam Neeson thriller. Just the idea that January is his month. That's what.
Yes.
So, does anybody want to start off with MLK FBI? Yeah.
Well, before that, I just want to say we should talk about what's on our Patreon.
Oh, right. We should, because why the fuck not? And also, you should listen to it because it's a lot of fun this week. We talked about the movie Hackers, starring a very young Angelina Jolie and a very young Johnny Lee Miller, and lots of other people who became famous later, like Wendell Pierce and blah, 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 Felicity Huffman. And it was a select piece choice, meaning one of our patrons chose this movie for us to watch, which is a tier that exists in our Patreon. So keep that in mind. If you have the inclination, please do sign up. We always have a lot of fun talking about the extra movie in the exclusive audio each week. So with that being said, how about some MLK FBI? Yeah.
Let's do it.
Sure.
Well, don't everybody all talk at once. I mean,
Well, I mean, I'm happy to start, although I've seen this less recently. MLK FBI is a documentary, and it is about the FBI's campaign to discredit and disgrace Martin Luther King Jr. during the civil rights movement as an effort to disrupt his what he as an effort to disrupt the movement and to make him look bad. And it's a pretty gross true story.
Yeah, it definitely is. I know Evan, you shared your thoughts obviously before on the episode about IFF Boston, but I have to say I really thought this was fantastic. I really enjoyed this tremendously. Some of this I already knew about Martin Luther King Jr. and about the FBI wiretapping and all of their gross tactics, which are so disgusting. And just on a side note, that's not really a side note, if you're really that concerned about communism and you're really that concerned about, quote, un-American actions and undemocratic actions, when you're literally doing all of the things that a military state or that a fascist regime would do, yeah, you may want to rethink that maybe the problem is you and not Martin Luther King Jr., who's preaching peace and racial justice and equality. But anyway, I digress.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But yeah, I thought this had, I have to say, the score, I think it's incredibly intense and ominous. Some of the piano music is really, really beautiful, almost like mystical. But the score was just, especially when it was in these ominous moments, I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I was like really like nervous. And so it definitely does a great job evoking the emotions and eliciting the emotions it's trying to elicit. And I know you had mentioned this before, Evan, about the talking heads. And I think it's a really interesting choice to have talking heads, but not show their faces and only have their names in relatively small text on screen. And there's not a lot of different talking heads. Like it's mostly the same people over and over again. Like someone who's a friend of Martin Luther King Jr., Clarence Jones, Beverly Gage, who's a Yale history professor, David Garrow, who wrote the book that this documentary is based on, The FBI and Martin Luther King Jr. from Solo to Memphis, and even James Comey. So yeah, so I mean, you're not seeing a wide berth of talking heads. You're seeing like it's the same ones kind of over and over, but it is still a really interesting choice to not show their faces and not have more talking heads. I'm very intrigued by that choice. But yeah, I think this does a really fantastic job showcasing how horrible the FBI was and how despicable it was and how disgusting it was. And one of my favorite quotes that either Beverly Gage or Donna Murch, who's also a professor, said is basically, you destroy the movement by destroying the figurehead. And that's really what it all came down to, is they were trying to smear his name just so racial justice, would, in their eyes, be no more. And it clearly is just born out of white supremacy and racism. It's awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gross, the lengths that they went to discredit King and really preying upon his extramarital affairs and recording those encounters, and like they got this like sick twisted thrill from doing it and trying to expose that to his wife. It's just like you, I knew some of this stuff. I don't think I quite knew the depths with which the FBI went to, which is probably the worst part of this documentary. But like, this was all part of J. Edgar Hoover's bag of tricks when he was head of the FBI. He was doing this kinds of stuff to all different kinds of people and abusing his power. So
yep,
he's a gross guy.
But what's so interesting, and this is something that Beverly Gage talks about. She says she's talking about that there's footage of people being asked what they think of Martin Luther King Jr. And no surprise, but the Black people they have on screen are like, oh, I think it's great. He's speaking up for Black people. And then the white people are like, I don't trust him. I don't like it. He's too bossy. And I'm like, oh my God, you people are disgusting. But what she says is that we forget that in polls, like public opinion polls, J. Edgar Hoover was fairly loved by a lot of mainstream people, the public, whereas Martin Luther King Jr. was not, especially amongst white people. And it's kind of it's not a surprise, but at the same time, it's still kind of mind-blowing because like I think back to when I was like growing up as a kid and like he was revered and we always had like history lessons talking about him and what a hero he was and how amazing he was. And so to think back that, people at that time, did not revere him. I mean, it's not a surprise, of course, but it's still somehow jarring to hear that.
Yeah, he did a really good job of using the PR machine to make the FBI and himself look good. And so I feel like a lot of the remnants of him in popular culture are the movies and the TV shows showing, the FBI, G-men, these guys and, nice suits, pressed suits, following all the rules and going by the book. And so we have this like image that's stuck around in popular culture, despite the fact that that was just smokescreen for all this illicit spying and other kinds of fuckery that was going on.
Other kinds of fuckery.
I love that. The fuckery. But that, and I'm so glad you mentioned that too, because I mean, it's very clear that that's what happened. But that Donna Murch in the documentary talks about that too, about how pop culture solidified the FBI and police as our saviors, and it especially with Black Lives Matter and all of these questions and investigations that are happening, should be happening. White people, we should be questioning our white privilege and talking about this more. The burden shouldn't just be on people of color and Black people specifically. But it is really disturbing to think about how for decades police and FBI have been seen as these bastions of morality and helping people and saving the day and righting wrongs. And it's like, no, it's like that institution was disgusting because of J. Edgar Hoover.
Agreed. Yeah. There's definitely a lot here in the documentary. It's very informative. And I think the choice not to use the talking heads and just use the voiceover is really interesting. And I wish that more documentaries kind of took risks with that regard. I think, as I mentioned before, for me, that was one of my problems with engaging with the film. It's like not seeing people, barely seeing their name. It's just hearing the voice to me and not having that kind of cut to the person made it harder for me to engage. And then when I finally saw the people at the end, because they do show them at the end, it's like, yeah, I could have used maybe just a little bit more of this.
Yes, that's true. Good point. Thank you. I'm thinking about throughout the film, but you're right. I see, and I actually liked that they didn't show their faces because what I like looked all the people up, and like while I was watching the film, I was curious. I was like, who's this? Who's that? But at the same time, listening it and watching and looking things up, kind of, I like to do all of these various things while I'm watching. Feels more kind of engaged in a weird way. But it kind of allowed, for me, it felt like it allowed more of the focus to be on Martin Luther King Jr. in a way, even though, yes, we do hear him speaking, and yes, there's archival footage. But it was interesting because for some reason, I don't want to say like people's faces are a distraction, but I do think that it really is, the focus is more on him and obviously the FBI. But yeah, so I actually really appreciated that choice and thought it is an interesting choice. And I agree with you, Evan, that more films should take risks, especially documentaries. But yeah, but for me, it was a choice, an unconventional choice, but it was one that worked.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. Well, gang, then on that note, let's move on to Don't Tell a Soul. I don't know why I keep doing that, but
it seems like something that should be said in a gruff, demonic kind of way.
One of you said that this movie was bleak or dark, or I can't remember. Grim.
Grim is that's how I would describe it.
Okay, so go ahead, please describe it.
I was going to say it's grim and gray, much like the smokestacks that punctuate the film. Yeah, this is it's a story about two brothers, 15 and 17, and their mom, Mina Suvari, is
their mom
ill with cancer.
Yep.
She's old enough to play a 17-year-old's mother. God, how the fuck old am I? Jesus.
Old.
Yeah. All right, please continue.
She's basically bedridden or couch ridden, if you want to say it more specifically. But they hear about this house that's being fumigated, and there's an old woman that lives there, and she has like a jar of cash, or like a tin of cash. So they break into the house and they steal the cash. And when they're leaving, the security guard, played by Rainn Wilson, sees them and chases them. And in the process of chasing them, he falls into a well that was covered up by some leaves. Ooh. And they have him in the well. And they decide to leave him in there. But like the crux of the film is like, do we help him out of the well, or do we leave him down there because he could rat us out? And you have the older brother, Matt, who's like quintessential shitty older brother. Like, I'm gonna be abusive to you. I'm gonna order you around. Like I'm just like a shithead. And then you have the younger brother. I think his name's Joey.
It is.
And Joey's more of like the like cautious kind of little bit of a like fraidy cat kind of kid, but this because he grew up with Matt, who was like being abusive and shitty, and so it's like Joey wants to help him out, wants to help Rainn Wilson out of the well, and Matt doesn't, and so yeah, it's like will they, won't they pull him out? And yeah, then you find out later on that Rainn Wilson is not a security guard. You find out his true identity.
Ooh.
We can talk about that more in a minute, but that's basically the movie in a nutshell. Did I miss anything, Megan?
I mean, there's a lot in there, especially in the second half after you find out his real identity. But yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, the only thing I will say is I didn't see Joey as a scaredy cat. I saw him. I mean, obviously, I think he's traumatized due to their father was abusive. Their father has died. And he was abusive, and it sounds like he may have been an alcoholic, and he had cancer. Their mother has cancer, and the whole reason the one thing I will add too is the whole reason that they're robbing the house is supposedly to pay for their mother's medical bills. That's what Matt, the older brother, keeps saying. But then twist, or really not a twist, but confrontation time, Matt's just throwing a huge rager, and Joey's like, the money was never for mom. And yeah. And it's also interesting because Joey he kind of becomes attached to Rainn Wilson's character, Mr. Hamby, and they talk on walkie-talkies, and like because Joey keeps bringing him like food, he brings him sandwiches, he brings him water, brings him a sleeping bag, and so pain pills, and so he clearly wants to help out, and he seems like a good kid, a compassionate kid, although he doesn't do the right thing right away. But then again, at the same time, when you live with someone who's abusive, you're scared to disobey them or to incur their wrath. So, yeah, but it is interesting seeing how the brothers, clash, and when Joey finally confronts Matt about the money, and yeah, then the twist.
Okay, so what's the goddamn twist, goddammit?
So the twist, Mom Mina Suvari has been watching the news this whole time, and each time you see her watching the news, there's another little sprinkling of information, and there's a cop who got shot, and then there's some other violence and some other issues, and then come to find out there's a serial killer on the loose, or not serial killer, there's a killer who killed his wife and killed his kid, and dun dun dun, it's Rainn Wilson.
Yeah.
Okay.
His real name's like Randy or something.
Of course.
It's not. Yeah, Randy Michael Sadler. It's not, Mr. Hamby. So yeah, it's, Joey finds out that information, and then, he tells Rainn Wilson, hey, I know what's going on. And then, he has to decide whether he's going to help him out of the well. Anyway, I think my issue with this movie, like my big issue, is that it's so grim and it's so bleak, and it just kind of revels in that for most of the film. And then it takes this really weird left turn into sentimentality in the last act, where it's like Rainn Wilson has become this fatherly figure, and he's like, going to help him get back at his older brother, and he's going to take him with him on whatever, journey he's going. And then like we find out that Mina Suvari was the one who killed her husband, because we hear, oh, he was shot by somebody that he crossed or something like that. And then you find out Mina Suvari shot him, and she pulls a gun on Rainn Wilson and shoots and kills him.
Oh, wait, you're skipping a lot, though. You're skipping a ton.
Yes.
Because we find that out about Mina Suvari later, but I mean, it's not that Rainn Wilson was going to be really fatherly. It was all just a ruse, just so he could manipulate Joey.
Yeah, but it still seems like there's a sentimentality there, like an actual sentimentality to me.
I do not agree. He shoves him in the well.
Yes, that's true. He does.
He just
he puts both brothers in the well, and then the older brother beats the shit out of Joey to the point where he's unconscious. And this is also like what bothers me about the sentimentality of it, is that like Matt has been like a sociopath basically up until this point, like just an unrepentant asshole and does not give a shit about anyone. Like he beats the shit out of his brother. He pisses on Rainn Wilson in the hole. He throws a gas canister of insecticide down into the hole to try and kill Rainn Wilson, which doesn't kill him because they had a gas mask earlier from the robbery that Rainn Wilson was able to snag, so he was okay-ish. And so, yeah, so the brother beats the shit out of him until he's unconscious. And then all of a sudden is like, oh my God, wake up. I'm so sad. What would I do without you? It's just, it feels like such a weird pivot for the character that just doesn't feel genuine to me. And I feel like there are all these like emotions in the last act. And I'm like, where are these coming from? This movie has been very grim and I've been on board with it being grim. So I don't understand where it's like trying to be this like sweet movie where the mom saves the day and kills the bad guy. And now our sons are happy together, even though they've both done fucked up shit.
So I actually agree with you about the sentimentality regarding Matt. I think it's a bullshit fucking ending. The last act redemption at the last minute is gross. It's manipulative. It's horseshit. This is a kid who not only was horrid and murderous to a stranger, but you're right, Evan, he's been incredibly abusive. But not only that, he literally tried to suffocate his brother with a plastic fucking bag over his head, and then he also threatened his brother and told him, if you come back to this well to help out Hamby, he's like, I will literally throw you down the well and light you on fire and murder you. Like, he says that. And the thing of it is literally right from the beginning of the film, when one of the beginning, not beginning scenes, but one of the first scenes, we see him, and this, I was watching the design of his room, and I was like, oh, this is trying to, even before we know how horrible he is, what a monster he is, his room is trying to indicate on some kind of level that he's a gross person. Because I'm looking around the room at all the posters, and they're all of naked women, but they're all incredibly exploitative pictures of women. Like, they're like bound and gagged, they're tied up, and not in like a bondage kind of way. Like, it's kind of like a gross, like, I'm gonna murder you kind of way. So I was like, this guy's a fucking
snuff kind of way.
Exactly. So I'm like, this guy's a creeper. And then as the film keeps going on, he's just worse and worse and worse and worse. And you're right, he does revel in that. Like, he proudly talks about how he's so much worse and more abusive than their father, which is just gross. So to have him all of a sudden at the last minute be like, oh, Joey, wake up, I was like, fuck you and fuck this film. And I did not like this film at all. I thought this has a great concept, such a fantastic concept, but the film is just not interesting enough to sustain the whole film. I mean, I will say it gets a little bit more interesting when the twist happens and, you know, you find out about Rainn Wilson's character, but still, it's just not enough. And I kind of wish it had been more grim. Like, I didn't find it grim enough. I was like, if you're going grim, go all the way. And maybe I feel that way because of the shitty ending.
The ending.
Yeah, it kind of unraveled anything. But yeah, I was just like, this movie, good God.
Did Joey wake up and not die? I don't think I caught that.
He does.
Okay.
Yeah, he does. Of course.
Got it.
Yeah. I will say I didn't mind, Suvari coming to save the day. That even though like it is kind of, heavy-handed, I didn't mind it.
Yeah, I don't think I really had that much of a problem with the mom saving the day. It just felt like the combination of events that led to that. It's like he helps Rainn Wilson out of the hole. Rainn Wilson comes back to his house with him. The mom sees that they're together and she's like, oh, shit. But he's like, it's fine, Mom. Then they go out to get the dad's truck. Then they get in the dad's truck. And this is another shithead thing the brother does, Dave. The brother goes to the police and says the younger brother is the one who did the robbery.
Well, he did.
They're in the cop car on the way to the house. No, but I mean, like, he sells his younger brother out and says it was entirely him and not anybody else. So they're in the cop car on the way back to the house. And then Rainn Wilson and Joey are in the truck together leaving, and then there's an armed confrontation where Rainn Wilson shoots both of the cops.
Wait,
but he doesn't kill him.
Oh,
he would have killed him if Joey wasn't there, he said.
Right. And again, we're getting into sentimentality, and he throws him back in the hole, but like there's just like a lot of back and forth there where you're like, I think on some twisted level he does care about this kid. He sees some element of himself in this kid for whatever fucking reason.
Well, he said,
because you can't really trust any of his backstory.
No, but you do find out that his backstory about his sister was not real, but he never reneges anything about his abusive brother, because he talks about how his brother used to beat the shit out of him too. So I kind of got the sense that if there's any kind of affinity for Joey, which I maintain there's not because he threw him down a fucking well, but if there is any kind of affinity, I would say it's kind of that. But I think it's this twisted, unhinged way, because he says to him, he's like, you have to fight and you have to show him, you're tough, and it's like a really fucked up, toxic way of handling the problem, obviously, because you can't reason with an abusive fucker like that.
Jesus.
No, you just have to almost die, so then they take pity on you.
Fucking movie.
Yeah. Well, gang, should we maybe move on before anybody I don't know, before anybody's skin melts off or head explodes? I don't know what to say. It sounds like, yeah. What do you think?
Oh, wait, I just want to say one thing. I do think Rainn Wilson does a pretty good job acting in this as a villain.
Yeah, Wayne Wilson. Rainn Wilson's solid all around, I've always thought. So.
Yeah, he's good. For me, he's probably the best part of the film.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. I mean, I think the performances all around were pretty good. I think the casting is pretty spot on here. I mean, even Mina Suvari, I think, does a good job here. She doesn't get that much to work with, but I think she's good. So for me, I think the cast and when the movie is sticking to its kind of grim tone, I think it works. And then at the end, for me, that's when it really just unraveled.
Yeah, and it did not work at all for me.
Okay. Well then, noted. I will not be watching Don't Tell a Soul. I mean, I kind of want to now, but I don't know. I would rather move on to Hunted, which is I don't know. How would you describe Hunted? It's unusual. It's this Belgian movie, but it's shot in English, and it's about these two creeps who, a woman is having a shitty day at work. She leaves her phone in her hotel room because her boyfriend keeps texting her, and she's like, fucking stop texting me. So she goes to a bar to get a drink. She leaves with one of the guys. She's making out with him. They kidnap her. They go to the woods. They have a car accident. She gets away. And then the rest of the movie is this like cat and mouse kind of thing about who's going to kill who first. So, and I should just add that I sort of, the whole thing with Eve wearing the bright red, like the first thing I notice is like, why is she wearing a bright red coat? I mean,
because it's a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood.
I know it's a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood, but it's like, that's what I mean. It's just kind of like, do we need to hit the nail on the head that much? I think everybody probably would have figured it out, I don't know.
Yeah.
I will go out on a limb here and say that I got a kick out of this. It was so fucking batshit crazy. I mean, this movie is crazy because it makes the decision to have one of the lead characters, this serial killer, who in the credits is just called the handsome guy, I think.
The guy.
He kind of looks like Bradley Cooper and Aaron Eckhart put together, except he's clearly not American, but he does a pretty good American accent.
Well, he is Israeli, I think.
Oh, is he?
Megan, you probably...
He's French, but yeah, he's...
You probably remember him from...
The End of Love, but he's French.
I found him to be really effective, and I found the movie's choice to make so much of this movie center on him and center on this fucking unhinged psycho creep. Just kind of like, yeah, okay. And the fact that he's I don't even know how to describe him. He's out of his mind, and he's a serial killer, but he's smart, but he's not that smart, which makes me wonder how he's gotten away with this for so long. Maybe by being ruthless. I'm not really sure. But the part where he screams that the woods really has a lot of negative energy, man, that just made me laugh out loud. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm glad I'm on the correct side of this movie's tone. And I also like the fact that Eve, we don't really know anything about her except that she's a survivor, man. And long story short, she kills everyone. But
that is a long story short, for sure. There's
rightly. I mean, what else is she going to do? You know?
Yeah. I liked the opening where the mother and the son are sitting by the fire and she's telling the story, like the mythology of like the woman in the woods. And I guess there's like a priest who's led a group of people like on a crusade through the woods, and they're going to kill her. But then the woods and the wolves in the woods, I don't know, rally behind her, and she's able to like kill all these guys. And I feel like the setup there for me made me think that the woods and supernatural elements were going to be more involved in the movie, and I was kind of gearing up to see that. I was a little bummed that there wasn't more of the supernatural elements, because I thought that would have been really cool. But I did really enjoy this movie, and I was thoroughly creeped out by the villain. And although this movie in places can be graphic, I think it was not quite as graphic as I was thinking it was going to be, and certainly not as gory. Like, I was expecting a lot more viscera in this movie. And I think it's effective, though, because it shows you just enough. And his performance is just so unsettling that I was so creeped out by him, even though there's so many scenes where you're not seeing all the gross stuff. You're like getting some stuff to the imagination.
Right. Megan, how do you feel?
I really liked this. Not everything worked, and we'll get into what didn't work for me, but I think overall this is really good. I think I'm going to probably mispronounce his name, but Aria Werthalter, who plays the guy, and especially after seeing him be so good in a completely opposite way in The End of Love, he's really great in this, and he revels in this performance. And the guy is so unhinged and so unpredictable and so weird that it just really, really works. And he's so creepy because he's so unpredictable, and because he can mimic, a very normal, for lack of a better word, person, and then he just turns on a dime, and which is very unsettling. And I think Lucy DeBay as Eve is really, really great. She starts off as very, very scared, obviously, and one of my favorite scenes is the gas station convenience store scene where she thinks the guy, where they don't let her out of the car right away, then they finally let her out of the car, and she walks over to it, and she's waiting for this nice clerk who says he's gonna give her a ride, and she's like looking through cards, and you hear this whine of this metal rack, and there's no score, and in the distance behind her you see a car pull up, so some shit's gonna go down. And then the guy comes back, and he's like slut shaming her and taunting her by using a stuffed rabbit that's in the store. That scene is fantastic. It's so tense, and I didn't know what was gonna happen, and it was great.
It's
and I
terrible.
loved that. It is. And I love that she starts off like that, and as the film progresses, as she spends more and more time in the woods, she becomes more primal, more aggressive. And my favorite scene might be when the guy in the woods, after trying to chase her and her eluding him for such a long time, he like yells to her like, "I'm gonna catch you," and she just lets out this blood curdling scream and grabs a stick and is on the move, and she's like, "Fuck you, I'm coming for you." And like the film is just bonkers after that. I mean, I shouldn't even say after that, because I mean, somebody comes back from the dead. Like, we're talking about supernatural elements. Somebody comes back from the dead. The crow helps her out. Later, a dog helps her out. So clearly there are fantasy supernatural elements happening in this film, very much like the story in the beginning that the woman shared. And I really dug that.
Yeah, I really dug that. Well, one, exactly what's going to happen from the opening story. So I was fairly confident that Eve was going to make it out alive no matter what happened. But I'm sure you guys were too. But I also appreciated that when we came back around and we found those two characters in the woods, but now they're both older. Like, and they've been like doing this, survivalist thing in the woods every weekend for like a decade. And the grandson is just like, yeah, we're survivalists, whatever. And the mom is like, no, seriously, man, we got to be prepared. And then she still gets bumped off but then she comes back to life because she gets tased or whatever happens to her.
Yep.
With an arrow through her ear that she pulls out.
Well, I thought that it was a bolt. So I was like, okay, maybe it's not like an arrow. Maybe it's a bolt. So maybe she's not like, maybe it didn't hit the really important parts of the gray matter. I don't know. But then when she pulls it out and it's clearly like an arrow, I was like, oh, gross. And she's dead. But then the kid saves Eve in one instance. Or not saves Eve. He just shoots the guy.
He helps Eve, though. He helps her.
Yeah. But then you never see him again. It's not like he doesn't like shoot him again. I also loved that they just like wander through a paintball survivalist game at some point.
That's a great scene. That. You want to talk about bonkers?
Exactly. Like all of a sudden they're trying to kill each other in the woods, and then all these guys playing paintball just run through, and Eve gets shot in the head with a blue paint dart. And so now her face is blue. She's got this bright red coat. Her hair is platinum blonde. So she's like red, white, and blue colors of the French and the American flags.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's just, I love the fact that for a while there, it seems like the guy is actually a little bit scared when they get, Eve is would you call her a four? She's not a four person. She's like in charge of this construction site that looks like they're building high-end condos or whatever.
Yeah. Project manager.
Project manager. Thank you. And they end up crashing through a window at this this place where she works, and presumably, she's been in the woods a couple days, so you think that like when somebody sees her, be like, "Oh, there's Eve! Oh my God, she's being chased by a psycho." No, they just go through the house, beating the shit out of each other, and just like it just continues on until Eve finally. How does she kill him? I don't even remember.
She chokes him.
She chokes him to death. Okay.
Yeah. I want to talk about that scene, though, because I found it incredibly frustrating that there was a realtor and a couple there. And first of all, the realtor just leaves and the couple just sits there and watches them beat the shit out of each other and literally does nothing to stop it. Absolutely nothing. And that made me so furious.
Yeah. It was weird.
It was weird.
It's an unusual choice.
Well, I was going to say, there are some very unusual choices that I think kind of took me out of the moment. So there are a lot of things I liked, and everything we talked about so far I actually really liked a lot. But some of the things, like some of the supporting actors, their acting, I found extremely questionable. I felt like I could see them acting rather than just being in the film, which just feels strange and jerked me out of it. And then, so I love that everything is kind of building to this crescendo of like this frenzied bonkers violence. But at the same time, Evan, like you, it felt very frustrating because I'm like, this is not realistic at all. And I know that sounds weird because a woman came back from the dead and a crow and a dog are helping out. Like, so clearly this is not realistic. But at the same time, you need to have certain realism anchor your film in order to believe it. And that felt very fake to me. And it's interesting because the whole time I'm loving how Eve is tapped into her rage and she's just uninhibited, doesn't give a fuck, full of fury, like almost like a Valkyrie, just, in her vengeance. And I love that. But at the same time, by the end, there's something about it that should have felt so cathartic and satisfying. And it just didn't feel satisfying to me. And I was kind of bummed about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe if he'd been like, fallen into the cement mixer and then he ended up as like one of the support beams in the house, that would have done it.
Maybe. I don't know.
I think I was really off-put by the fact that he seemed turned on even in death. That was weird. The way he was like grinning and seemed like he had like a hard-on for being killed.
Well, she also seems like she's aroused while she's strangling him.
I think she's earned it at this point, though. I mean,
that's fair.
Why not?
That's fair.
Like you've been fighting for your life for 48 hours. Why not have a little bit of enjoyment about this, even if it's sexual? I mean, come on.
Yeah. But to Megan's point about the realism, I mean, of the couple in the house, the guy could have tried to stop the fight and then got smashed over the head or knocked over. That would have made that scene better if he tried to stop it and just couldn't because they're both just too powerful.
Well, I think you guys are overestimating how much people would want to help in a situation like that.
Oh, I don't think they necessarily want to help.
Yeah, well, I share your frustration that they don't do anything, because while I'm watching that scene, going like, why isn't anybody doing anything?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of like, at this point in the movie, it is just about these two. So, I'm willing to let that one go. I did love it though when the dog bit the shit out of the guy, though. That really, just made me laugh. I was like, the one time, because you know when a dog bites a person in a movie, it's always you can tell it's like a stunt dog and it's like biting their coat or whatever. And they clearly like had some like protective gear on the stunt person's arm, and this dog was biting a human being, you know, or his leg, wherever he bit him. I don't remember, but it was just like, this looks legit, man. I also wanted to point out, and I never look at posters or things like that, but did you guys look at the poster for?
We actually tweeted it out.
Okay. It says 2 maniac killers, the woods, Eve. Kind of like that. What a perfect summation of this movie. Although I don't know if the other killer's a maniac. I mean, he just seems like he's, clearly he's expendable, but well, it's also, he gets killed by the other killer.
It's also hard to know if he's an unhinged killer too, because he's clearly being threatened and manipulated by the guy. Like, he doesn't even call him by his real name. He calls him Andy. And I don't know what his obsession with the name Andy is, because he also calls the son of the woman who gets the arrow in her head, he calls him Andy as well. So, and he also, when he taunts Eve in the convenience store, he says Andy is saying this when he's using the bunny as like a puppet voice. So clearly he's got some obsession with whomever Andy is. I don't know who, but yeah. So
his dog was named Andy.
Yeah, his fake dog is named Andy.
Exactly.
Too.
That's what I mean. He names the fake dog that. He's obsessed with his name. So I don't think that the guy who's credited as the accomplice in the credits, I don't know if he actually is on board with everything that's happening, because he does say, I don't think this is right. I feel sick about this. But then at the same time, he's also like, yeah, getting ramped up, which is super disgusting and creepy when they're alluding to rape and anyway.
Yeah. Good thing that boar walked into the middle of the road, huh?
Oh my God. That's a weird scene too, which I have some issues with.
Because there's boar vision before it gets hit by the car.
Well, there's that.
Isn't there like the boar's point of view when it's running through the woods?
Yes.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yes.
I mean, are you talking about this? You have a problem with it as a person who does not partake in the animals, or as a food source? I mean. Or just because like it was not done very well or something like that, or both.
I have two problems, and one of them is I'm always upset when there's animal cruelty or animal death. So yes, the boar getting killed, getting run over is very sad. So that's upsetting. The other thing that is upsetting to me, or not upsetting, but kind of problematic, is that you're never really sure if the guy is queer or not, because he, says some kind of things that might allude to the fact that he is. And, and he says to the guy, he's like, why are you disgusted by me? Because he wiped off the mouth of the bottle. And then he's like, you need to kiss me. He's like, we're going to kiss. And then they're about to kiss. And then, then they don't, because they hit the boar. But what bothers me is that if he is queer, and we don't know, we have no idea. But if he is, the fact that one of the only possible queer characters on screen is a homicidal rapist maniac, that I have a huge problem with, because it is a unfortunate trope that in certain films that queer characters are murderous or unhinged or sociopathic. And so, yeah, that kind of bothered me.
Yeah, I can see that point of view. I took it to mean that he was it was more about power over whoever this guy was than anything else.
Oh, totally. That too. Yeah.
Although I did, I mean, I who knows? His character is written in such, it's so broad. You could interpret it a number of different ways, I'm sure. Which is, I'm sure, on purpose. And I also just appreciate that I'm not going to try to pronounce the actor's name. I thought he was fucking great. And I thought she was great too. She doesn't really say much. She says a lot with her face.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't say much with her, actual speech. But it just, oh man, I was so glad that, like, I was afraid I was going to get some kind of like torture in the woods kind of movie. And I'm contrary to, I love horror movies, but I do not like the whole torture subgenre.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad that this turned out to just be fucking crazy. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And in places where I thought it would be a lot more graphic, it actually kind of reined itself in. I liked that about it.
I did too. So, Megan, do you have anything else to add before we move on?
No, I think there's a lot of good things here in this. And even though like there are certain things that I wish had been a little better, I sometimes found the pacing lagging. I wish some of the writing had been a little bit better. Some of the supporting actors, I wish their acting had been a little bit better. But overall, I think this was enjoyable and a wacky good time.
Okay. All right then, gang. Well, shall we move on to The Marksman, starring Liam Neeson, because it's January.
Yes.
Well.
Yeah. Sean and I were joking that his name was Jim Marksman.
That's not really his name, is it?
No, his name is Jim Hansen in the movie.
God.
Jim Hansen, which made me think his name was Jim Henson at first.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Too close.
So The Marksman. It's not good.
No.
I mean, I don't know if it's bad.
Oh, it's bad.
I mean, but if let's use a 4-star scale. I give it 1.5.
That's pretty bad.
Well, yeah, that is pretty bad. I mean, it's just like, this movie's sense of pacing is all over the place. It doesn't, there is no coherence to the decisions that Liam Neeson's character makes. His stepdaughter is completely underused in what could be a cool performance, but she literally doesn't have anything to do except talk on the phone most of the time. And, this could be a story about, human rights and asylum and all those kinds of things. But instead it turns into this dumb cat and mouse, cartel trying to kill this kid thing. I mean, it just, and it's kind of a gross message. So
yeah,
it's kind of, it's bad. Somebody else, please sum this up.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. So Liam Neeson is a Vietnam vet who lives on the border of the U.S., the U.S.-Mexican border. He has like a ranch there in Arizona. And, he frequently sees, people coming over from Mexico, and usually he, kind of radios it in. You see a scene in the beginning where he finds a man who has an injured foot, and he, radios it in, make sure the guy gets medical treatment. And his stepdaughter works in Border Patrol. But he is down by the fence for, I don't even remember what fucking reason, and he sees a mother.
Because the script told him to be there.
Yeah. He sees a mother and a son who are crossing over the border, and they've left Mexico because the kid's uncle has crossed the cartel, and he gave them some money and said, get out of here. So they're trying to cross the border. The cartel catches them as they just crossed the fence, and there's a shootout, and the kid's mother is killed, not right away, but she's shot and she dies. But before she dies, she gives Liam Neeson an address in Chicago and says, get my son to his relatives in Chicago. And so the rest of the movie is like him deciding to look after this kid and get him to Chicago while the cartel guys chase after them. And that's the movie.
Yeah. It's a bad movie. I mean, we should reiterate that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the movie is titled The Marksman, and I was expecting, first of all, a lot more action, but at the very least, more marksmanship. There's barely any marksmanship in this entire movie.
Exactly. It should have been called like The Amateur Marksman. I mean, like The Weekend Marksman. You know,
when he does engage in shootouts, he does hit his mark, but it's just not enough of that.
Yeah, there's not enough, and unfortunately, I mean, everybody kind of knows what Liam Neeson can do in one of his January action movies, and I feel like they're so varied in quality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got Taken, which is, for better or worse, kind of the apex, and then the other Takens are just forget them.
The Gray, Unstoppable. No, not Unstoppable. What was it? Like the plain one?
Nonstop.
Yeah, I don't remember. Well, The Gray starts out right. The Gray I really hated, but that's partly because I hate all Joe Carnahan movies. But anyway, that's another story for another time.
But I think you were saying something good there, Dave, about this being, it had a chance to be this like really interesting action movie that's also about human rights and immigration, but instead it just goes for all the low-hanging fruit on the action tree. It's dead wife. Right. He's behind on his bills. He's going to lose his farm. He's a Vietnam vet. He is also a bigot, so he's not going to like that this kid doesn't speak English, which he later turns out, it does. He's got a dog. Oh, wait, the dog's dead. Yeah, that's right. It's one of those.
He's an alcoholic. Don't forget that too.
Yep, don't forget that. You know what this movie is, except really, and I'm no John Cassavetes fan, but this is basically Gloria with an old man instead of Jenna Rollins and a Mexican kid instead of just an American kid. Because they're being hunted. They've got something that, the cartel wants. It's stupendously disappointing, especially when we just came off a sort of mediocre Liam Neeson movie where he's like the bank robber who decides he's going to turn himself in because he's getting married to Kate Walsh.
Mm-hmm.
What? Liam Neeson, you are a genuine... The reason they come to you, Liam Neeson, if you're listening, the reason they come to you with these scripts is because you have an audience. You're one of the few people left who can command an audience solely by being you. So demand better quality writing, please. I mean, not even better quality writing, just a speech with, I've got a particular set of skills. That's enough. I mean, you can make a lot of hay with that, Liam Neeson. So I don't know. I don't really have much to say except that it was a fucking bummer, and it was long, and there were so many lulls in the action, and it's just like, how many times am I going to watch these people be 30 yards away from each other and not see each other? Ugh. God, the worst fucking like enforcer in any cartel or mafia or whatever ever. This guy's inept. And I also found it particularly in a movie that just kind of revels in, in I don't know what kind of like random cruelty when they kill the woman who's like the store clerk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just, I know it happens off screen, but like, just so unnecessary. We know he's evil, okay? You don't need to kill the store clerk to prove it to us, okay? My God. Just the fucking worst choices in this fucking movie. Now it's making me mad. Excuse me. Movies that make Dave mad. A subgenre on Spoiler Piece Theater. Anyway, Megan, what do you think? I mean...
So you guys know I love a father figure, traveling with a kid story. It is... I'm a sucker for it. I've shared this on the show before. And especially because we got such a great one with News of the World recently. And this is just just, it's not good at all. And you guys have said a lot of my problems, like the fact that there's so many tropes in this, the fact that literally Liam Neeson's character is going down a line of just ticking off every single box, but he doesn't actually feel like a fully fleshed out character in any way, shape, or form. And I was actually kind of, I don't want to say excited, but I was like, oh, we're going to be exploring immigration. We're going to be exploring, how people can't, immigrate to this country, legally, and all of the obstacles and human rights violations. And I was like, yes, we're going to get into this. Okay, we're going to dig into racism while being an action movie. And no, there's none of that. but there is a lot of hot dog talk. But at the same time, they never get a hot dog in Chicago. I was pissed. So I was very, very pissed.
So mad.
But yeah, so thinking about like why Liam Neeson keeps getting these scripts, and obviously everyone's trying to cash in still on Taken. And Taken, you know, Dave, I agree. I don't think it's better for worse. I think it's for better, because I think Taken is fantastic. I love Liam Neeson in that role. I love that movie, as ridiculous as it is, because it's exciting, because Liam Neeson is really good in it. And the thing of it is that I feel like a lot of films don't understand or appreciate with him is he's really fucking funny. Like, he has a really dry, deadpan wit that a lot of people just don't understand. And I find Taken hilarious. I also find that a couple of the scenes in Cold Pursuit, as terrible of a movie as that is, there are some really funny scenes. And so I was expecting some humor. I was expecting some over-the-top ridiculousness in the action. And as I'm watching, instead of him shooting, he's having a fist fight with the head of the cartel, or whomever he is. I don't even know, don't even care. But, you know, the last guy who's standing, and they're having a fist fight, and it's ridiculous because clearly Liam Neeson's almost 70, and that does not necessarily mean anything, because there are plenty of people in their, you know, 60s and 70s who are badasses physically as far as physicality goes. But it's very clear they're slowing down the action scene so it doesn't look like it's so slow and that Liam Neeson can keep up. And it's just like, why are you doing this? Like, why not have a really cool shootout? Why not, you know, you call it the Marksman. He's supposed to be a great shot. Why not utilize that to its fullest capacity? And it's just, there are some baffling choices in this. And this is also poorly written, not interesting at all. The one thing I will say in this film's favor, I found the cinematography incredibly aesthetically pleasing, like almost surprisingly so. I thought that the cinematography was really good, and I was kind of shocked, because usually a film like this, the cinematography is kind of an afterthought, or it's not really, doesn't look, or it looks like an afterthought. It's not really great. And I was like, wow, that's a really beautiful shot. That's a really striking scene. And so that's good. I will say that for this film. But for me, that is literally the only thing. I mean, yeah. Anyway, I'm just irritated that we could have had Liam Neeson's character realizing that he's a xenophobic, racist fuck, and that never happens. Never. Not even a conversation about it. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, the thing that I struggled with is that I didn't even find him believable as a bigot. Like, he doesn't do it. Like, he does not sell being a bigot. So, like, why even bother having him be that in the first place?
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that scene with Catherine Winnick in the bar where he says, there's something he says, I wish I could remember it now, but it's something like, I wish the government would get its damn shit together and clean up this mess. Like, talking about, you know, people coming over the border. And I'm like, well, that's an oversimplification. And it sounds so hokey and ridiculous.
Yes. Yes, it does. So, yeah. So, all right. Anybody want to add anything else to the fucking shit fucking Marksman?
I don't know why they bothered to tell us what days of the week it was. Like, I don't know why it was important for us to know this happened in, like, what, 5 days or some
That's a
shit.
question.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Did you say you have a question?
No, I said that's a good question. But I do actually have a question now that you mention it. I want to know why there was all this goddamn hot dog talk. They literally pass by a hot dog cart and they don't stop. And Liam Neeson is dying. They couldn't, whatever. Like, they can't stop to go to the hospital, but they could stop for a hot dog. Anyway, I'm very angry.
I want to know how a guy covered in blood has exact change to get on the bus and the bus driver lets him on. That's what I want to know.
He's covering it up with his shirt, Dave.
His face was bruised and bloodied.
Yeah.
No one's going to ask that guy if he's all right.
I mean, I know that Liam Neeson is like 6'5" and is built like, you know, a fucking oak cabinet, but still. Anyway. All right. Well, fine. Shall we wrap this one up, gang?
Yes.
I think that oh boy. Well, where can we see these movies? I don't even fucking know. Well, The Marksman is coming out in theaters, which blows my mind that theaters are still a thing. But that's coming out in theaters. Hunted is on Shudder as of yesterday. MLK FBI, someone help me out.
I believe it's on VOD.
Yes, that is correct. It is on VOD. And so is Don't Tell a Soul, if memory serves. So there you have it, gang. That's where you can see all of the movies, except don't see The Marksman. Even if you've got like a decent January fetish, don't see The Marksman.
Just watch Taken again.
Yeah, just watch Taken again. So anyway, on our way out, we want to say thank you to our excellent editor, Autoclamor, who makes our jobs so much easier by us not having to edit.
Yeah, thanks, Otto.
Oh, wait. We didn't do a recap of whether or not we should see the movies.
Oh, that's true. Should we? I mean, they're great.
We do
Whatever.
it every week.
I know we do. Like, you can't expect me to remember the rules of the show, even though I've been doing this nearly 7 years. I mean, come on. Okay, so let's recap it. MLK FBI. You two say?
Yes.
Yes.
Don't Tell a Soul. Go.
No.
I'm going to have to say no.
Oh, wow. Okay. For me, Hunted is a yes.
Yes.
Megan and Evan?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I think The Marksman is a resounding no from all three of us. I don't mean to speak for you two, but...
Speak for me.
Yeah, okay. Good. Well then, folks, let me tell you where you can get the podcast. Anywhere you can get podcasts, you can find Spoiler Piece Theater. Please visit us at our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on the social medias, Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. We're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can send us an email, spoilerpiece@gmail.com. Please tell us what you think of our reviews or whether we're right or wrong. Please let us know what you think of the whole Liam Neeson January thing, which is really sticking in my brain for some reason.
Do they really all come out in January? I didn't notice that.
They really do,
Wow.
yeah. And if you wanted to leave us a voicemail, you could give us a call.
At 862-21-PEACE.
Yeah, call us, leave us a message, tell us you love Liam Neeson no matter what. I mean, come on, just go ahead. And if you like the show, please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. And if you really, really like the show, please join our Patreon. Just as a reminder, we talk about the 1995 movie Hackers on our exclusive audio this week. It's a select piece choice from one of our patrons. Thank you, patron. And while we're at it, we would like to thank our patrons.
We want to give a huge thank you to Bill Skehan, Bob Chipman, Charles Nash, Chris Wilkinson, Davida Margolin, Deirdre Crimmins, Elisa, Christopher Jensen, Max Coville, Mike, Lord of the Sith, Rory Glynn, Sean Pensionar, Shauna Harris, Shelley M. McCaskill, Shona Glasgow, and Zach Pigeon. Thank you so much, patrons.
Thanks, patrons.
Thanks.
And that is it. So my name is Dave Riedel. I write sometimes for Salt Lake City Weekly. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can follow me on the tweets and the Letterboxd and the Instagram as Dave Sees Movies.
My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionS World and on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.